Hey, Blake T. Wild here, and welcome to the Ultimate Year, where I am covering a bunch of Ultimate Marvel comics because my viewers love to watch me suffer. And I am doing one of my most popular series that I have ever covered from the Ultimate Universe. The Ultimates! For some reason, people just love the horrible version of the Avengers that exists in this universe. And it does well on my channel for some reason, and I'm really banking on this video doing well. But share it, please. I just need a win. I know I have this sweet vest on. It's a really cool vest. I know. Please don't bring it up in the comments. Just don't acknowledge my vest. Please don't talk about my vest. This isn't what we're here to discuss. We're not here to talk about my cool vest. We're here to talk about this 20-year-old comic. Share this video and leave a like. Leave a like for the Ultimates, not my vest. And then after you do that, make sure to check out my videos on Ultimates Volume 1 and 2. Because this is Ultimates 2 Volume 1. Not Ultimates 1, Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 2, Volume 1 of Ultimates 1 is some completely different thing. This is Ultimates 2, Volume 1, and then Volume 2 of Ultimates 2, and then Ultimates 3, which is awful, has, I think, only one volume. Released in 2005, written by Mark Miller with art by Brian Hitch, this is The Ultimates 2. The book begins 1 year after the previous series, The Ultimates Volume 2. In the skies above northern Iraq, Captain America free falls into the Euphrates River before making his way into a small town where American hostages are being held. And yeah, Cap does his thing and breaks into the hostage building where he discovers all the hostages safe and secure. He informs them that transport will arrive in 45 minutes, and then all the insurgents inside raise their rifles and surround him. So he gives them a hard stare, and they drop their weapons. He is so lucky that that actually worked, because while he is a peak human, he is not bulletproof. But I guess if a hard stare can work for Paddington, it can work for Captain America.
It's awful hot in here. Are you hot? I'm hot. Did I leave the oven on?
Later, the 24-hour news cycle erupts with coverage of the hostages returning to America as Tony Stark goes on a PR tour regarding the issue being raised about the Ultimates and S.H.I.E.L.D., a domestic American organization, crossing international lines. Cut to the Triskelion. Wow, what a modern marvel of engineering and architecture and just all-around fantastic design by artist Brian Hitch. Henry Pym, the cuckold, arrives and is ridiculed by some S.H.I.E.L.D. guards before he enters the vestibule into the chamber housing Bruce Banner. Banner makes a Silence of the Lambs reference, and Hank asks how long he's been waiting to say that. Hank sits in front of the cells, they make small talk about how Bruce is doing. He says that now that he's on some new medication, he's only hulked out once in the past 6 weeks, and when he did, he just watched TV. And the psychic therapy sessions he's undergoing with Professor X is also really helping. I should also note that the reason that Fury is keeping these two dipshits around is because he's kind of just outsourcing their scientific genius for S.H.I.E.L.D.'s purposes. Like, he's kind of promising that, like, he's kind of dangling before Hank Pym, like, oh, hey, if you make something good enough, I'll let you back on the team, when he is absolutely not going to do that. So these two have just been coming up with inventions and superhero ideas for S.H.I.E.L.D. to enact, and Hank has brought along his newest creation, a lunch bag full of ants, and a very distinct helmet. Hank says that he came up with some fantastic ideas since they last met, and then he thanks Bruce for his notes on the Ultron project, before he shrinks down and rides with a swarm of ants. Bruce is in disbelief as Hank explains that there's no way Giant Man will be let back on the team after the current mess they're in, so he came up with a new hero idea. Later that night at a fancy rooftop restaurant, Thor meets his buddy Volstagg. Thor walks through the restaurant to the utter shock of everyone inside and sits down with his old Asgardian compatriot. Volstagg says that he's glad that Thor finally left those ultimate idiots, and then calls them part of the New World Order who are wholly at odds with everything that Thor stands for. Thor asks if this whole meeting is going to be a lecture as Volstagg fills his gullet, and he explains that Odin has sent him to inform Thor about his brother Loki. He has allied himself with something very powerful, and is now able to rewrite reality itself. Thor finishes his drink and says he'll be ready. Then a waiter comes over and asks Thor if he's waiting for anyone or just eating alone. Thor turns back to discover that he's all alone. Yeah, if you've, read or watched my video on Ultimate Thor, I kinda know where this is going. Cut to a news report going out live, revealing that the identity of the Hulk has been confirmed via S.H.I.E.L.D. leaks as Dr. Robert Bruce Banner. Meanwhile, Tony Stark helps the European Defense Initiative super team retrieve a downed submarine while Wanda and Pietro are on a nice romantic lounge trip down the waterways of Venice. And Pietro gets a call from S.H.I.E.L.D., who informs them of the situation and tells them to return to the Triskelion. The following morning, in a conference room, Nick Fury speaks to Iron Man, Cap, Wasp, Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, Betty Ross, and Black Widow. She's the newest member of this mainstream Ultimates team. She was previously just part of, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Black Ops covert unit, but they're bringing her out into the limelight. Also, she and Tony Stark are dating. Fury says that it's one thing to lie to the American public, but the fact that they lied to the president about the Hulk really fucked them over. Tony points out that national security is S.H.I.E.L.D.'s whole thing, and Fury asks how Stark would have done it better. Then Hawkeye shows up late as Cap says it's wrong to lie about being heroes when they instead were just cleaning up their own messes. Fury tells him that Betty and the PR team spun it into something that kickstarted the Ultimates, and that they should all be pretty goddamn grateful. Then he reveals that they have to cut Banner loose. President Bush wants a phony but televised trial where Bruce Banner is prosecuted for the murder of 852 civilians, an automatic death sentence. Hawkeye asks what the hell S.H.I.E.L.D. is doing about the security breach, since, he works there and has secrets like a family to take care of. And Fury says it's being handled. And then Cap asks if it was Thor who did it. Fury says that it's an educated guess, but hey, can't prove anything yet. And so, sometime later, Captain America once again free falls from a helicopter above Times Square and lands on a rooftop club where he bashes his way inside to find Thor chatting about politics with a young woman. And this being the ultimate Captain America, he immediately goes on the defensive as he calls Thor out for leaking classified information. So Thor shouts louder than the very music itself to the DJ to shut it off. Everyone stops and watches as Thor explains, 1, he didn't do jack shit. He barely knows how to use an email. 2, he's only been to the Triskelion 3 times. Once with Fury, once with Tony to have breakfast, and the 3rd time was last Christmas when they held a charity event. 3, he is not Hank Pym, and he is not going to crumble at the sight of Captain America. Cap then begins to leave when the crowd starts mocking him, spitting on him, tossing their drinks over him, and then Thor shouts, "Enough!" Thor reprimands everyone in attendance and asks if Steve's okay. Then he explains that he might know who leaked the files. His evil half-brother Loki has escaped, and before he can continue, Cap tells him to shut the hell up and leaves. Meanwhile, in the relaxing beach of his mind, Bruce Banner walks with Charles Xavier. He explains that this is the first time he's felt relieved in years. Bruce has known that he's going to be executed since the first time that they locked him away. But there's just something liberating about knowing that it's finally going to happen. Xavier asks where exactly they are, and Bruce explains that they're in a kind of crossed memory between when he and his parents went to the beach and when he spent the summer at his cousin Jenny's house in New Jersey. Then, definitely not Patrick Stewart, Professor X, says that their time's up for the day. Later, Nick Fury sees Xavier and his escort Cyclops out of the building. Xavier asks if Fury has possibly given his idea of taking Banner back to the school to help him any more thought, but Fury tells him bluntly that this is not about finding a peaceful solution. This is about giving the public a villainous scapegoat. Wow! I'm covering a comic with Professor X in it? And I'm not gonna have to put it in my Professor X is a terrible person playlist? A few days later, at the Daniel Patrick Moynihan United States Courthouse, the Hulk trial begins its first day with attorney Matt Murdock and Foggy Nelson representing Bruce Banner. Tony, Cap, Jan, and Natasha all watch from the comfort of Stark's Manor, and Cap changes the channel, asking what the point even is since they all know how this is gonna end. And 8 days later...
How are you feeling, Dr. Banner?
How am I feeling? Nervous. It's like I'm back in high school waiting for my exam results.
Did you ever think it would end up like this?
Oh yeah, public enemy number 1. I wanted to be Captain America, man. Skinny Steve Rogers enlists and gets given the super soldier serum, and suddenly he's transformed into a living legend of World War II. That's what I wanted. Cut the feed. Dr. Banner, would you like the good news or the bad news? Both, I guess. The good news is that the judge threw the whole case out of the court. The bad news is that I just got charged $150 for this bottle of Dom Perignon. Oh my god! Are you sure? Are you 100% sure? 110%. You are off the hook, you lucky little runt. Oh my god! This is unbelievable! How did they end up throwing it out of court? Well, it wasn't until your buddies on the team marched into court and pointed out how the Hulk almost single-handedly saved the world from an alien invasion, son. I don't know whether to laugh or cry! This is crazy! I can't believe the guys came through for me like this! Believe it. Now let's get a toast to getting you out of this stupid cell altogether, huh? You and me, we both know that the Hulk problem is under control again. But I figure it's time that the rest of the world does, too. I'll drink to that! Proceed as planned, gentlemen. Sometime later, in a classified location deep within the Pacific Ocean, a helicopter drops off Dr. Bruce Banner onto the runway of an aircraft carrier, and as the helicopter flies off, Tony finishes setting everything up, then he pops up onto deck to check on Bruce, and leaves a cross and rosaries.
Oh, and people wonder why I drink.
With 3 minutes until detonation, Tony flies back to the helicarrier, and where the Ultimates wait aboard for the detonation. And just before the bomb goes off, Banner's eyes rip open, coated in green. And then nothing. Sometime later, Hank Pym returns to his increasingly rundown apartment and listens to his messages. When the machine alerts him of an incoming call, Hank ignores it and just prepares some food, when a very familiar voice says that he just called to say thank you. Hank runs to the phone to answer, but the call has ended. And somewhere in a South Pacific country, Bruce Banner disappears into the crowd. Sometime later, Natasha and Tony fly over St. Petersburg in Russia as she tests out her new armor suit that he made her for her birthday. Tony then grabs her and says that the armor is only half of the surprise, and explains that Nat is the first real person he's actually met. And if the tumor in his brain has taught him anything, it's to not pass up on a golden opportunity when he sees it. They fly through the clouds and into the countryside, where Tony has written a proposal to her using 3 million people, the entire population of her home city. Then they lift their masks up and embrace in the sky. And meanwhile in Rome, 500,000 protesters march through the streets in regards to the European Defense Initiative superhero team. Police fire tear gas into the crowd and then charge into the protesters, shields and batons first. The police brutalize people as they attempt to escape until lightning erupts through the sky and into the city streets. And Thor orders the police to leave these people alone. Later, the Ultimates meet with the aforementioned European superheroes. Captains Britain, Spain, France, and Italy. Professor Braddock explains that there are 9 total countries involved in the initial stage of their program, but these are the only super soldiers currently ready to engage in combat. Tony asks what exactly this has to do with Thor, and a man named Gunnar Goldman steps forward and explains that he has been leading the Norwegian team. Then he plays some test footage depicting the biomechanical approach that they took for creating the super soldier, such as the harness to imbue the wearer with flight, durability, and super strength, and the hammer, which ionizes the environment and artificially manipulates the weather and can instantly teleport the user anywhere in the world. Okay, I'm not gonna, bury the lead or anything. It's Loki. This guy is Loki. This man in green is Loki. We saw him earlier when Thor was in the restaurant. He's in the background walking by. It's Loki. He's fucking with the Ultimates. He claims that Thor is actually his lunatic brother, Thorleif, who stole the equipment from the research lab after he had a mental breakdown. Then Fury orders the Ultimates to bring Thor in tonight before things get worse. This episode is brought to you by my Patreon and my comics, Destructo Boy and the Custodians Agents of Cross. Each issue of the Custodians Agents of Cross is over 60 pages of pure comics, written, illustrated, colored, lettered, designed. Everything you see in these books was created entirely by myself. And this asks the all-important question, what if the only heroes that can save the world are an intelligent baboon, a girl who controls fire, the world's smartest man with the power of elasticity only in his right arm, and a 4-armed werewolf? And this just follows their exploits. Like I said, it is a love letter to the 60s, Silver Age, and to all of comics in general. As you'll see as the series progresses to its 6th and final issue. This entire first issue, however, is posted in its entirety on my Patreon, patreon.com/Smokey's videos, where you can read the entire thing for only $2. Normally this book, I sell it for $15, which already is a far better deal than anything you're getting from Marvel or DC these days. But as little as $2 a month, you can get access to the entire issue. And I am serializing issue 2 as we speak. But that's not all, because I also have my sci-fi, zany, just crazy fun series, fun for the whole family, all-age comic, Destructo Boy. Destructo Boy follows this little robot guy right here as he lives on a giant space station in the far-flung future, and he battles crime, giant robots, giant monsters, and evil conquerors from space such as Grimlax the Astro Knight. Each of these issues just introduces as much zany sci-fi craziness as I could fit into these books. They're being serialized on my Patreon as I speak as well, and you can pick up all 5 issues on my Etsy shop, blaketwild.etsy.com. Later, in Norway, Thor sits in the snow outside of a massive bonfire party meditating. Jane Foster makes her way over to him, and Thor tells her to get everyone out. But it's too late. Thor unleashes his hammer lightning into the forest towards Quicksilver and strikes him, launching him across the snow. Thor then screams to the sky that he's not going anywhere, but asks that S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Ultimates give time for the civilians to leave. And in a strategy plane above, Fury watches satellite footage of Thor and tells his team to wait 20 minutes. EU and US soldiers escort the civilians out of there, and once the area is clear in a mile in every direction, the Ultimates and European superheroes make their presence known. Thor explains that it's Loki who's behind all this. He's tricking with them and playing with reality in their minds. And Tony tells him to just stop and says that he's mentally ill and is a danger to himself and others.
Cap, for God's sake, make them listen to me.
Sorry, chum. You're nuts, and you're going down. Captains Britain and Spain tackle Thor and order Wasp to get him. Wasp flies into his mouth. Why? Why is that every fucking, Ultimate Writer's goddamn go-to action with the Wasp is to make her go into the villain's mouth? It happens to the Hulk. It happens in Ultimates 1, Volume 2. It happens when the Blob eats her. It's ridiculous. Why? He ends up accidentally swallowing her, spoiler alert, and then barfs her up later.
Get off of me, you idiots! Can't you see what they're doing, Tony? They're trying to silence the conscience of the team.
Thor, for God's sake, stop!
Please, you have to understand. Loki is screwed with reality and none of Fury's information
So
is
they can
real.
use us in the Middle East. I know. You're a paranoid schizophrenic. You need psychiatric help. I'm sorry, but I don't believe you.
And I am sorry too.
Get away from him! Hippie scum! You know what I hate about you people? You grow up with everything, and then you bite the hand that feeds you.
You can afford it!
The baby! What have you done to my baby?
What?
I was 3 months pregnant. You idiot!
Natasha, I'm so sorry.
Suka!
Tell me we've got him.
Hold him down! Natasha, bring the neuron scrambler online! Come on, get the harness off! Thor, stop! We won't have to hurt you so much!
Traitors! Traitors! How dare you lay a hand on me? You get no more chances! I want anyone still standing in the group on Thor. I want him nailed and I want his power belt. I tried to explain, I really did. What happens now is nobody's fault but your own. I came here to save the world, and all you've done is try to crucify me. You're going to die for this, Loki. Hear me, trickster. This charade you've created ends. Whoa!
Gotcha!
Father!
Just give the word and you get some instant ventilation, Cap.
Take it easy, Hawkeye. He's done.
Nice apartment. Fury told me that this used to be Bruce Banner's cell. I know it's all a bit plain right now, but once they've moved your stuff in, you really won't recognize the place. It'll be your little home away from home. What's the matter? You're not angry with me, are you?
How did you get in here?
You know there's no malice in what I've done here. It's just part of our little game, right, brother?
Father sent me here to save this world, Loki. This isn't a game. You already killed poor Banner with your pranks.
I knew I'd get the blame. But I really had nothing to do with outing Banner to the press. But between you and me, you have a wolf in the fold, Thor.
What?
Yep, a little traitor in your team of super soldiers. They're working for some friends of mine, and together with what I have in mind, the next few months should be very...
Security! Security! There's a man outside my cell. He knows who betrayed the Ultimates.
Go to sleep, Thor. You're the only one in there.
Oh, poor little Odin's son. It must be so frustrating being teased by a foe who can shuffle reality like a pack of cards. Then again, perhaps they're right. What if this is all in your head?
Early the next morning, Fury calls Hawkeye, Cap, and Tony into his office and says that they have a big problem coming from the Middle East. Now that ends on a pretty high note, right? It's ominous, it shows that Thor was right the whole time, not just about Loki, but about the Ultimates. It's a fantastic place for Mark Miller to then usher into the next storyline. But that doesn't happen because now we have to talk about this. The Ultimates 2, number 6, involves Hank Pym teaming up with this shitty vigilante team calling themselves the Defenders. They're a shitty team of nobodies who have no real powers yet, and Hank bangs the 19-year-old Valkyrie as he continues to try and convince Fury to accept his inventions, such as the androids Ultron and Vision. Fury says nothing Hank does matters, because there's no fucking way that they're letting him back into the organization. Especially not now, after the whole Hulk thing. And sometime later, the team go to bust some petty criminals when Nighthawk lands wrong, breaks his ankle, is beaten up, thrown out of a window, lands on a car, covered in gasoline, and nearly burnt to death, causing Valkyrie to try and stop the petty criminals, causing Hank to have to step in and reveal himself in more ways than one. Unfortunately, there was also a news photographer nearby because Nighthawk alerted him that they would be there tonight. Sometime later, Hank sits in his apartment speaking to an unseen figure who suggests that he do what they did. Betray the Ultimates and S.H.I.E.L.D. The person says that they hate the Ultimates and what they stand for and what they had to do today. And Hank asks what the fuck they're talking about. And then the figure turns on the television to reveal the Ultimates, S.H.I.E.L.D., and the European Defense Initiative crippled a nation. The end. Alright, I'll be honest, this was a fun story. I actually enjoyed it. It's definitely not as ham-fisted or as just stupid as the first Ultimates was, that's for sure. The Thor storyline is definitely the best out of this bunch. It's my favorite. Honestly, Thor from the Ultimate Universe is one of those top-tier characters from this just despicable world. It was a neat introduction, especially if you have read the Ultimate Thor book before this, then you kind of know, like, oh shit, you know, Thor's not lying. I'm sure it works better if you read it. This, and then the Ultimate Thor backstory, which came out about 6-7 years later, but Ultimate Thor is just a really cool character, I think. The Bruce Banner Hulk story is well-needed closing of the book on that plot line, and something that just really needed to be done to push the series into a more like high concept direction that it'll later go into. It's becoming more becoming more fantastical in what the threats are that the Ultimates are going to have to deal with in the next volume. It's the Liberators, who are the like ultimate evil Ultimates. It's an interesting. This is where I think the Ultimate Universe sort of becomes a lot more interesting, and I think that this is a well done evolution of the world. It's the escalation of it. I don't care about 98% of that last issue, but the caption, "We crippled a nation this morning," and the imagery of the missiles being lifted up into the air with the military, Giant Man, and Cap in the center is just incredible. Not to mention the burning sky in the background. The colors work fantastically. The composition of this splash page is so fantastically done by Brian Hitch. It's unnerving, it's upsetting to see, it's upsetting to the caption. It's like I said, it's a very ominous, uncomfortable ending, and I really did enjoy myself. I didn't have a bad time with this as much as I did the other two Ultimate videos. But let me know what you thought of it in the comments below. And also let me know what Ultimate comics or stories or whatever I should be covering. Are there specific Ultimate issues? Or is there storylines that maybe haven't been collected anywhere? Let me know in the comments. Please don't talk about my vest. And as always, follow me on Instagram at NotBlakeWild. Check out my Patreon, patreon.com/Smokey'sVideos, and Etsy, BlakeTWild.etsy.com. I will see you next time for another Ultimate thing. Bye.